Layla Brooks was just a rookie when one wrong email nearly destroyed her career. But what started as a mistake spiraled into a battle for the truth, a hidden family legacy, and a forbidden love with the man secretly watching her rise. From betrayal in the boardroom to a kiss that changed everything, Layla fought against lies, power plays, and her own fears to claim the future she never knew she deserved. Who was really behind her mother's silence? And what was Alex Sinclair hiding all along? Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and hit subscribe for more stories like this. The Atlanta skyline shimmered like a string of jewels through the massive glass windows of Sinclair Systems, a towering tech giant nestled in the heart of Midtown. The hum of the city below was a blend of jazz drifting from rooftop lounges and the occasional honk of late-night traffic. Inside the sleek, open-floor office, the energy pulsed with ambition. Even past midnight, Layla Brooks sat hunched over her desk on the 27th floor, her laptop aglow in the dim light. Her curls, defiant and untamed, were wrangled into a messy bun that leaned more chaos than control. Her square glasses slid down her nose as her brown eyes darted across spreadsheets filled with code and incomplete notes. A half-drained cup of coffee balanced perilously near the edge of her cluttered desk, and papers sprawled around her like fallen leaves. She looked every bit like a woman wrestling the storm of first-week panic. 27, fresh out of a prestigious fellowship and still smelling faintly of graduation robes and adrenaline, Layla was Sinclair's newest data analyst. A rising star from Atlanta's west side. She'd fought tooth and nail to land this role, beating out hundreds of candidates with little more than a stellar pitch and a resume built on grit. But now, staring at a blinking cursor and a presentation deadline in the rearview mirror, she felt like she'd already failed. "You are so done," she whispered, rubbing her temples. She glanced at the clock. 1:13 a.m. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, except the janitor whose cart rattled faintly down the hallway. Layla took a deep breath and opened her email, planning to vent to Marcus, her best friend and emergency therapist since freshman year. He was a podcast journalist now, but still her go-to when things hit the fan. Subject line: "Somebody save me from this corporate nonsense." She typed furiously, "My manager is basically a sleep-deprived hawk in heels. Every time I breathe wrong, she stares like she's calculating my severance. I'm 2 spreadsheet errors away from setting off the office fire alarm just to get some air. Someone send help, or tequila, or a new identity. Sincerely, a stressed-out wreck who forgot how Excel works." She hit send with a dramatic flourish, only to realize, 5 seconds too late, that she'd sent it not to Marcus, but to the entire company distribution list. Her stomach dropped. The subject line blinked mockingly at her from her outbox. She had just called her manager a hawk, publicly. At 1 a.m., "Oh, no, she groaned, dropping her forehead to the keyboard. "Please let the Wi-Fi go out. Please let this company be swallowed by a sinkhole before morning." But the email was already out there. To the interns, the VPs, the assistant to the CEO, maybe even the CEO himself, Ethan Sinclair, the elusive, workaholic founder nobody had seen in weeks. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she imagined security escorting her out with a cardboard box by sunrise. She stood abruptly, the room tilting slightly from too much caffeine and not enough hope. She needed air, or at least more coffee. She padded down the corridor, her worn sneakers squeaking on the polished floors. Her thrifted blazer was slightly too big, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, and a silk scarf with bold African patterns, her mother's gift, was knotted around her neck like armor. Music played faintly from her earbuds. Aretha Franklin's "Ain't No Way." Layla moved to the beat, hips swaying as she stepped into the break room. The space gleamed with chrome fixtures and a coffee machine that looked capable of space travel. She set her cup down and hit the brew button. Humming along, she didn't hear the door open behind her, didn't realize she wasn't alone until she turned mid-spin and nearly crashed into someone. "Whoa," she gasped, stumbling. A strong hand caught her elbow, steadying her. A warm chuckle followed. "Didn't mean to startle you." She looked up and forgot how to breathe. The man in front of her wore a navy suit that fit like it had been stitched directly onto him. His hair was tousled just enough to suggest he'd been running his hands through it all night, and his blue eyes sparkled with amusement. He was, in a word, dangerous. dangerously handsome. Layla barely slept that night. Every time she shut her eyes, the email flashed behind her lids like a neon warning sign. By the time morning sun sliced through the office windows, she was back at her desk, running on vending machine coffee and pure dread. No one said anything about the email yet, but the glances, the muffled giggles by the copier, and the two interns who suddenly found her fascinating said enough. She had become the office meme before she even got her ID badge laminated. To make matters worse, Miss Camden, her team lead and unofficial queen of soul-crushing silence, hadn't acknowledged her all day. No side-eye, no lecture, not even passive-aggressive tapping of stilettos. Just a single Slack message that read, "See me, 4 p.m. sharp." Layla read it 17 times, wondering if she should bring a resignation letter or just fake her own death. She buried herself in work, trying to finish a project proposal that had ballooned into a 5-day nightmare. It was a full redesign for the company's new predictive AI engine. Complex, data-heavy, high stakes, and apparently hers alone. "Welcome to Sinclair," she muttered, triple-checking formulas, knowing full well it wouldn't matter if the pitch deck sang and danced, it wouldn't erase the email. By 6:45 p.m., the office had thinned out. The city outside glowed against the night sky. Layla was the last one left, again, fingers aching from typing. The database she needed access to was locked behind admin permissions, and her requests to IT had been met with radio silence. She considered crawling under her desk and living there forever. She needed a break. Again, the coffee machine called to her like a siren. She headed to the break room, earbuds in, blasting Donny Hathaway like a lifeline. As she swayed slightly to the beat, reaching for a clean mug, the door clicked open behind her. She turned, half expecting Miss Camden's judging glare. Instead, it was him. The guy from the night before. Navy suit, lazy smile, eyes that looked like they could read minds or rewrite them. He leaned casually against the doorframe, his tie loosened and his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow. "Back again?" he asked, voice low, smooth. "You really like this coffee, huh?" Layla blinked, flustered. "It's either this or sleep, and sleep's a luxury I can't afford." He walked in, grabbed a mug, and filled it. "Rough day?" She exhaled a tired laugh. "More like a rough week, possibly a rough life. Depends on how long I survive here." "You'll be fine," he said, watching her with an expression that felt knowing. "Sinclair Systems is tough, but you look like you can take a punch." "Is that supposed to be comforting? Would you believe me if I said I meant it as a compliment?" Layla eyed him suspiciously. "You're awfully confident for someone who keeps showing up in break rooms after midnight." "Maybe I like the company." She flushed, then quickly looked away. "So what do you do here? You've got that mysterious vibe, like you run some underground espresso syndicate." He smiled around his coffee cup. "Let's just say I know my way around the place." She narrowed her eyes. "Still sounds fake." He laughed, and it hit her again, that flutter in her chest. She'd kissed this man last night. In a moment of caffeine-induced madness, she'd let a stranger kiss her in a break room like it was some old Hollywood movie. And now he was back, charming, calm, like none of it had rattled him. "So," she said, trying to deflect her own racing thoughts, "you got a name this time, or do I keep calling you tall, dark, and sneaky?" He hesitated a second too long, then said, "Alec, just Alec." "Layla," she replied, sticking out her hand. "But I'm sure you already know that, since I'm now famous for company-wide meltdowns." Their hands touched, warm, steady. A spark flared again, subtle but impossible to ignore. He didn't let go right away. "Nice to officially meet you, Layla Brooks." She smiled, a little breathless. "Nice to meet you too, Alec." And just like that, the break room didn't feel so cold anymore. Layla hadn't expected the boardroom to feel like a courtroom. But as she sat at the edge of the glass table surrounded by people in crisp suits and colder expressions, that's exactly what it felt like. Her palms were damp, and her heart thudded like a gavel. The AI analytics proposal she had slaved over was up for presentation. And somehow, it wasn't her name attached to it anymore. Miss Camden stood confidently at the front of the room, clicking through slides that Layla recognized all too well. Her charts, her projections, her color-coded interface mock-ups. Her heart sank with every click, every nod of approval from board members who had no idea the person behind the work was sitting silently in the back row. "This next phase," Camden said smoothly, was my initiative to enhance algorithmic precision using predictive modeling based on real-time behavior mapping. Layla blinked. Her initiative, the pit in her stomach, gave way to rising heat. This wasn't just oversight. This was theft. Her fingers trembled over the edge of her chair. She had stayed up 4 nights straight, chased down locked datasets, fought imposter syndrome and a killer migraine, and now her work was being paraded as someone else's win. She looked toward the head of the table and caught her breath. Alec. He was there, seated in the CEO's spot, calm and unreadable. His tailored charcoal suit and steel blue eyes commanded attention, but it wasn't his posture that stunned her. It was the fact that he was Ethan Sinclair, the elusive CEO, the one she thought was some random break-room coffee guy. Her mind reeled. He'd known who he was the whole time. He'd kissed her, teased her, helped her find the hidden analytics folder that saved her project, all while keeping his identity a secret. And now, he was sitting there while Camden claimed her work. No. Not like this. Layla stood up, her chair scraping against the floor with a screech that turned every head. "Excuse me," she said, voice sharper than she intended, "but that proposal isn't Camden's work. It's mine." Silence swept across the room like a fog. Camden froze mid-sentence. A few board members exchanged confused glances. Layla's heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear herself continue. "I created that presentation," she said, walking forward, laptop under her arm. "I have the original drafts, dated files, source data, everything." Camden's face contorted. "Layla, sit down. This is neither the time nor the—" "Actually," Alex said, his voice calm but edged with steel, "I'd like to see the proof." Layla locked eyes with him, trying to read what was behind that cool facade. Then she plugged in her laptop, projecting her version of the presentation, identical to Camden's slides but with timestamps and working notes that clearly bore her name. The board members leaned forward. One of them, a senior partner named Glass, squinted at the screen. "These dates go back over a week. These are clearly the originals." Alex steepled his fingers, expression unreadable. "Camden?" Camden looked cornered but tried to smile. "Of course," Layla contributed, "but the final form? No." Layla cut in. "You didn't give me access to half the data. I found it myself, and you never even opened my final report until you copied it." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Camden stepped back, her confidence crumbling. Alex's gaze was locked on Layla now, and for the first time, she saw something different there. Pride. "Thank you, Miss Brooks," Alex said quietly. "Your work speaks for itself. Camden will speak privately." The meeting adjourned in a flurry of tension and disbelief. Layla walked out, her head spinning, the adrenaline slowly turning to exhaustion. Alec caught up to her by the elevators. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her with that same mix of warmth and regret. "You should have told me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know," he replied, "but I didn't want you to see me as the CEO. I wanted to see how you'd handle this on your own." "And?" He smiled faintly. "You crushed it." She stared at him, still raw, still angry, still wanting to kiss him all over again. Instead, she turned and stepped into the elevator. "Next time," she said as the doors began to close, "don't wait for me to fight alone." He met her gaze just before they shut. "Next time, I won't." The days that followed moved like storm clouds across a tense Atlanta sky. Layla barely had time to enjoy her small victory. The fallout from the boardroom clash rippled through the company. Miss Camden was reassigned to a strategic transition role, and Layla was asked to lead the AI analytics initiative she'd fought to reclaim. Her workload doubled overnight, and whispers followed her through the halls like shadows. Some coworkers offered stiff nods of approval, others kept their distance, unsure how to treat the rookie who had just taken down her manager in front of the board. And then there was Alec, or Ethan, rather. They hadn't spoken since the elevator doors closed between them. No late-night break-room run-ins, no secret sticky notes, just silence, thick and complicated. Layla told herself it was better this way. No distractions, no blurred lines. But that didn't stop her from replaying every moment in her head. His hands brushing hers. The kiss. The way he looked at her when she stood up for herself. He was still her boss now, and the more she tried to forget that night, the more her heart betrayed her. She needed clarity. But what she got instead was chaos. It started with a forwarded email from Marcus. Subject line, "You won't believe this." Layla opened it and found a PDF attachment, an old, scanned document from the Sinclair family archive. At the top, in bold, faded print, were the words, Caldwell Sinclair Estate, Airship Letter of Concern. And beneath it, a name she recognized, Brielle Vaughn. She frowned. Brielle? Alec's assistant? She called Marcus immediately. Where did you get this? She demanded. Stumbled on it while poking through Sinclair Systems' public records dump. But here's the weird part, Marcus said. There's no public record of Brielle being related to the Sinclairs. None. But this letter, this forged-looking piece of junk, claims she's a blood relative. An heir. And if Henry Sinclair, the board chair, steps down because of his health, she could take a seat, Layla finished, her stomach tightening. Marcus exhaled. Exactly. Layla sat at her desk, her fingers frozen over her keyboard. This was bigger than corporate sabotage. It was a power grab, an inside job dressed up in family drama. The next day, a wave of rumors washed over the office. Henry Sinclair was unwell. Some whispered stroke, others said dementia. Layla didn't know what was true, only that Brielle was everywhere, hovering near boardrooms, scheduling closed-door meetings, flashing that practiced, hollow smile of hers like she already owned the place. Alec, or Ethan, seemed troubled when she passed him in the hallway. They didn't speak, but his eyes lingered on her, like there was something he wanted to say. She wanted to confront him, to ask why he hadn't warned her, but instead she buried herself in project files, headphones in, heart locked up tight. Then came the invitation. A formal email with an elegant header. Franklin Sinclair requests your presence at a private dinner. The location, the Sinclair estate, the house from the photo Layla had found in her late mother's belongings. The one she never understood. The one her mom never explained. That night, Layla stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her curls were pulled back into a sleek bun, her mother's scarf tied around her neck like armor. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the old photo again. Her, barely 4 years old, standing with her mom in front of that same white-columned house. She hadn't imagined it. She'd been there before. Marcus's voice echoed in her mind. Something happened in that house, Layla. Your mom was trying to protect you from it. She clenched her jaw, slipped the photo into her clutch, and walked out the door. At the Sinclair estate, she was greeted by a warm butler and ushered into a dining room that looked like a museum. Marble floors, oil paintings, candlelight flickering over silverware that probably cost more than her rent. Franklin Sinclair, older now, but regal and sharp-eyed, smiled as she entered. You've grown, he said softly, as if speaking to a memory. You remind me so much of her. Layla's heart pounded. Of who? Your mother, he said, nodding to the photo in her hand. I've been waiting to tell you everything. And just like that, the story she thought she knew began to shift beneath her feet. The next morning, Sinclair Systems was humming with a tension that buzzed just beneath the surface. Layla walked through the revolving doors with her head high, but her mind spun with everything had told her the night before. Her mother, Nia Brooks, hadn't just been a nurse at the Sinclair estate. She'd been the one who pulled a child, Franklin's granddaughter, from a burning wreck after a car crash that killed 2 members of the Caldwell family. The rumors about a lost heir weren't just gossip. They were real. But here's the twist. The child didn't survive. Layla did. Nia had taken her daughter, left everything behind, and never spoke of it again. Franklin had found out years later but chose to honor Nia's decision. She feared the Sinclair name would put a target on your back, he'd said, voice heavy with regret. But I swore I would protect you if ever the time came. And now, with his health failing and a false heir circling like a vulture, that time had come. Layla arrived at her desk to find a new sticky note on her monitor. You're a force, Layla. Don't hold back now. A.S. She stared at it, her breath catching. Alec, he hadn't spoken to her since before the dinner, but he was still watching, still supporting her in shadows. And she needed that. Because today, everything would come to a head. At precisely 11 a.m., the board gathered for an emergency meeting. Rumors had swirled fast. Franklin Sinclair was stepping down. Leadership was about to change. And Brielle Vaughn, immaculately dressed in her signature ivory suit, walked into the boardroom with the smug air of someone who thought she'd already won. Layla followed, laptop tucked under her arm, heart thudding like a war drum. The room quieted as Franklin took his seat, a cane in his hand, his posture frailer than usual, but his eyes razor-sharp. Alec sat beside him, his expression unreadable. Clara Sinclair, Franklin's daughter and a board member, eyed Brielle with visible suspicion. "I appreciate you all coming on such short notice," Franklin began, his voice steady despite the rasp. "There have been claims, personal ones, tied to our family's future and our company's leadership. Before any decisions are made, I believe the truth must come to light." Brielle stepped forward smoothly. "I have documentation confirming my lineage," she said, pulling out a manila folder. "My grandmother, Elena Caldwell, was Franklin's cousin. After the accident, my side of the family was forgotten. This letter confirms it." She passed out printed copies. "I am prepared to accept a leadership position and secure the company's future." Franklin looked to Alec, then to Layla. "Ms. Brooks, would you care to respond?" Layla stood, her hands trembling slightly as she opened her laptop and projected screenshots onto the boardroom screen. "This is the same letter Ms. Vaughn just distributed," she said, zooming in on the metadata. "Except here, you'll see it was created last week on her company-issued laptop and altered multiple times." Gasps echoed across the table. "These aren't archival scans, they're fakes," Layla continued. "I compared them with genuine files from the Sinclair archive, obtained with Clara's help, and I have an email trail that confirms Brielle searched, downloaded, and modified these records to create a false heirship claim." Brielle's face went white. That's not true. This is slander." "It's fact," Alec said finally, stepping forward. "I reviewed the server logs myself, and for the record, I'm the one who gave Layla access." Murmurs exploded. Clara stood. "We'll confirm this with IT immediately. But it seems clear Miss Vaughn has deceived this board." Brielle's mask cracked. She turned to Franklin. "You're making a mistake. She's just a rookie, a nobody." Franklin's eyes locked on Layla. "She's my legacy," he said firmly. "Not by blood, by truth. And that is the only inheritance I care about." Security was called. Brielle was escorted out, heels echoing like gunshots down the marble hallway. Layla collapsed into a seat, her body shaking as adrenaline ebbed. Alec knelt beside her, his hand brushing hers. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "Not even close, but I will be." He smiled, and this time she let herself fall into it. The storm had passed, but a new beginning had just begun. Life rarely unfolds the way we plan. For Layla Brooks, her journey from a rookie data analyst to a powerful voice in the boardroom wasn't paved with certainty. It was carved out of resilience, integrity, and courage. She made mistakes, like sending the wrong email, doubted her worth, and battled imposter syndrome. But at every turn, she chose to stand up instead of shrinking down. The heart of this story isn't just about exposing lies or climbing the corporate ladder. It's about owning your truth, even when others try to rewrite it. Layla didn't have wealth, a last name with legacy, or the safety of knowing someone would catch her if she fell. But she had something stronger. The will to fight for what's right, and the wisdom to remember where she came from. And then there's Alec. Proof that vulnerability and power can coexist, and that sometimes the greatest partnerships are born not in boardrooms, but in the quiet spaces between trust and timing. We're reminded that being underestimated can be your greatest advantage. And that no matter where you start, your voice matters, especially when you use it to stand up for yourself and those who came before you. Now it's your turn. Where are you tuning in from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you loved this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next powerful chapter.